Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here tonight. Thank you.
I do not know anything about SQL.
I'm super excited to be here tonight.
My name is Dan Stewart. I am a captain with OKC Police Department. I've been there about 21 years. And what I want to share with you is kind of what we're doing in the future to do with data that has to do with SQL. So we want to get involved. And so over the last year, I've been researching and developing a new position called a business intelligence specialist. What that position is, it's a highly technical position, at least in law enforcement, right? So we don't really have anyone that could occupy that position. So rather than try and recruit you for this position, I want to share with you what we're doing in data, why it's super exciting that we're going down this road. So we've always kind of looked at data, but we never really did what we could do. Like, we never took it to the farthest level. We always just kind of, we say, hey, where's the crime happening? And we pull the data, we put it on a map, and we kind of go about our business. You know, we report certain things to the FBI when there's certain things we're required to report. But what we want to do is we want to start using it more holistically. And so that's where this position came in. We actually opened it up on November 8th, and it closes on November 24th. But some of the things that we're doing, like, so for instance, the initial project that we have is, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2017, 2018, we added 129 positions. It was a vote by the people that added 129 positions to the police department, and we distributed a lot of those bodies. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure that they're distributed in the right places. If we put them in divisions, do we have supervision? And we have CAD data to help us with that. And so basically, anytime you call 911, we collect that data. There is literally millions and millions and millions of lines of nice, clean CAD data. I mean, we can see everything in it. We can see how long officers take on calls, how many calls we get, where the calls are. There's GPS coordinates in there. We can graph it. So what we've done so far, we started looking at the total calls, the number of priority calls. So every time a call comes in, it's prioritized. So if you're getting stabbed, that's a very high priority. If someone stole your grass clippings, it's a very low priority. So we can see the difference between high priority calls, low priority calls. We can pull in our RMS data, our records management system. All this is housed in a SQL database. We can pull that in, we can marry it to the CAD data, and we can see where violent crime's happening. And we can say, hey, how many officers do we need in this part of town where the violent crime is high? We can look at how many accidents we work. So just in like 2018, we worked 24,000 accidents in Oklahoma City. I mean, the numbers are astonishing. I mean, unless you do the job, you might not have a gauge on just how much our police officers do. To kind of give you an idea, we're a department of we're authorized 1,235 police officers. We have about 300 non-sworn civilians that work for us as well. So we're a large agency, probably about the 25th largest agency in the nation. But we can also look at how many times an officer from a district has to leave his district to go answer calls, right? So it tells us how much work is going on. So that's like the initial project that we want to work on. But what we want to look at too is we want to look at staffing. So we want, what would be ideal is for the chief every year to be able to go to city council and say, here's where our staffing needs are. I would like to develop an algorithm using our data, using our SQL data, our CAD data, whatever data we have available to us, to come up with an algorithm to say, this is what our staffing needs are in operations. And then I'd like to use it to say, this is what our staffing needs are in investigations, right? So if you look nationwide, there are companies that we could hire to help us with operations staffing, but they're very general. So no one is really going to come in and say, hey, St. Anthony's over at 10th and Walker, they generate this many calls, and it's because we transport a bunch of mental health calls all around the state, right? So they're not going to know that. We will know that. We can apply that information as we work in our data. So it allows us to create more kind of tailor-made algorithms, if you will. I'm not a tech guy, so I always say that word algorithm, and I don't know if I'm actually using it right, but to me it's a system. We want to create a system that allows us to do that, and we want to do the same thing with investigations. there are not companies out there that help you with investigation staff, and so this is like, it's like uncharted territory. One of the other things we want to look at is like efficiencies. How long are officers spending on calls? How long are they spending on traffic stops? How many traffic stops do they make? So we could help our officers be more efficient. We could see, hey, you could spend this much time doing this or not spend this much time. So there's the possibilities are just endless. Another thing we want to do with our CAD data, or with our data in general, is we have fleet, right? So we have a fleet of 1,011 pieces of equipment, right? We have 647 marked vehicles, marked police cars that we have to maintain. We have 305 unmarked, and we have 59 specialty vehicles. That includes 2 helicopters. We got, I think, 6 boats, a bunch of trucks, a bunch of trailers, just a whole bunch of equipment that help us to do our job, all necessary. And so we're buying, like, to give you an idea, Ford, we just bought 47 Ford SUVs, and for 2 years, Ford is giving us unlimited access to the analytics that comes in the car. So we're going to know everything about it for 2 years for this 47, and then we're going to pull the trigger here in a little bit and buy another 80, 82 or 83. So we're going to have that. And we can see everything from GPS location to maintenance to everything, and we have that for 2 years. So we really like to look at that and say, hey, what does this tell us about our vehicle, our driving habits? To kind of give you an idea, just since July 1st, and I track this just in an Excel spreadsheet, but we've wrecked 112 cars since July 1st. Of those, we've deadlined 18 of them. We've deadlined a total of 20, but the marked vehicles, we've deadlined 18. We've repaired 78, and then we've said, hey, you know what, on 26 of them, let's just drive it with a dent in it, or drive it with a scratch. Last year, fiscal year last year, from July 1st to June 30th, we wrecked 226 vehicles. We wreck about a third of our fleet every year. So we deadlined 45 marked vehicles. We deadlined 50 total. We spent over $1 million repairing vehicles last year. So this is why we need this position. This is why we need to look at our data, because we can see what caused the accidents. We can see the time an officer has that was in the accident. So if we know if our rookies are bouncing off stuff all day long, then maybe we don't put them in new cars, right? So we can see all this. We can see it in what we call M5. Everything's housed in a SQL database. We can marry that to CAD. We can marry it to personnel. We can marry it to all this other stuff. But what we need is that person to tell us and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Then we say, okay, you know what? All these accidents are caused by, not paying attention. So then we gear our training towards it, right? So then we have RMS data. So that's our new records management system. And it's kind of a running joke on the police department. So like I said, I started in January, it'd be 21 years. And when I started, we were working towards a new records management system. So the system that we used to have, we bought in 1987. So the new system that they said that was going to start when I started 21 years ago, we launched in March. But the good thing is we converted all that data into the new system, and we have it all. We have access to it all in a SQL database. And so there's all sorts of things we can look at, right? So we can look at investigations, caseloads. We can look at how long investigators are spending on cases. We can look at solvability. We can look at anyone familiar with State Question 780? So they passed that and went into effect July 1st of 2017, and it kind of a lot of these crimes that used to be a felony, they upped the threshold. So now what used to be a felony is now a misdemeanor. So one of the things we're working with UCO on is we're trying to evaluate what that did. Are we putting more people in jail, less people in jail? How did that affect us? And so that's one of the things we can do. We have the data, we just need to work, start looking into it. We do a cite and release. Kind of the trend nationwide is to put less people in jail, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing if, because sometimes we just become, I don't know if you heard the expression, a debtor's jail, a debtor's prison. So we're putting people in jail and they stay in there because they can't afford to get out. So it's a good thing that we're not putting everybody in jail. But we need to look at, okay, how does that impact us? What, are we doing the right thing? And so we have data that tells us that. So there is a ton of things that we can do. I mean, I could literally sit up and talk to you about this for the next hour, but I won't do that. But I would love to answer any questions that you might have about anything I've shared. I know I kind of threw a lot at you, or anything about the position. When we created the position, we tried to create a position that was competitively, the salary was competitive. We really researched kind of out in the market. It's probably still a little bit below market, but you know, if you compare it to doing data analytics in an oil and gas company as opposed to the city, we might pay you a little bit less, but we're going to give you benefits and you're going to have a job for a long time. So there's a lot of job security, things like that. And the thing with the police department is, I mean, you hear that, the thin blue line, and we're family. I mean, it really is a family environment. It's a wonderful place to work. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been there for 21 years. But if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. If not, I'll hang out for a little bit. Come talk to me. I'll give you a card. You can shoot me an email. I'll answer any question you have. All right. Well, thank you very much for